Welcome to the Recruiting Masters podcast brought to you by the CFC Insider. We're Katie and Clint, and you are listening to another CFL Draft edition with Quincy Forde. Quincy, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
We're good, thanks. So we are going to be talking about the O-line today. We finished the receiver position last episode. I guess we'll just get right into it. It looks like we've got 8 prospects that we're going to be talking about. Obviously, the draft is over, so we're going to be talking about where they went, what round. Let's start with Noah Zur. He's a left tackle, 6'7", 305 pounds, out of Langenburg, Saskatchewan. He played his high school at Yorkton Regional. Then he was at USask, and I guess he was picked by the BC Lions. So he was a CFC 100 for us. Quincy, what do you have to say about him, and how happy or not are you with his draft position?
Yeah, Noah Zur was technically the first guy on my board, although it's a little weird to say that, given I think right now my board was looking like, or at the time of the draft, it had 5 offensive linemen within like 6 or 7 spots of each other. So to me, like, the difference between the offensive lines came with what you're looking for to do scheme wise and how pro ready you need them to be, or like what type of athleticism and movement skills you're looking for in your guys. But Zur's the guy with the biggest frame, and in my opinion, he was the most pro ready of the group. He's not the fastest mover compared to some of the other guys, but does a good job sustaining blocks and locking on. And he also went to the New York Giants mini camp, interestingly. He didn't test the best. I know his 40 was 5.79, which is on the slower end. So he's not the best in space and things like that, but he's probably the most polished of the group. Getting him at 12 I thought was pretty good for BC, given they had a need at O-line, and that would have made him, I believe, the 4th offensive lineman off the board. So that was a good pick for them. Interesting offensive line class, given I'm not sure, unless it was a very pressing team need, I'm not sure there would have been an offensive lineman in this draft class with a first round grade for me, and if they would have gotten that, they would have been at the very tail end of the first round.
Do you remember Zur?
Yeah, I remember in high school. It's hard to miss, like in Saskatchewan, whenever there's like a player in high school who actually looks like a O-line, like has huge upside. Usually everybody in the province knows who he is. We saw him the same time we're going to talk about him later, Rodine Brown. We caught both those guys, I think, off Team Saskatchewan, or one of those teams from Saskatchewan that goes down and plays they play each other down in the States every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember him, totally remember him. It's hard to miss like a 6'7" kid, because right away you're like, oh, farm kid, especially where he's from. So, and he probably would have had a really good mentor at the University of Saskatchewan with Flory, because I'm pretty sure, is Flory already a Hall of Famer, or at some point he'll go into the CFL Hall of Fame? So totally remember that kid, though.
Our next prospect is Zack.
Pelehos.
Okay, well, what he said, he's an O-line, 6'6", 300 pounds, out of Gananoque, Ontario. He played at U Ottawa, and the Red Blacks picked him up. It looks like he has got a crap ton of accolades out of U Sports. What do you have to say about him?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. He actually joined the Red Blacks team in 2018, and I believe started at left tackle as a true freshman, and then became academically ineligible for the 2019 season. So didn't play in 2019, didn't play in 2020. So 2021 was just his second year of university football. And this year he started at right tackle for them and was their team MVP. To me, he's the guy who I'd consider to give him like a tag of having the highest ceiling of the offensive linemen in this draft class. He's the most athletic, I'd say. He ran a 5.28 40, had a 29-inch vertical, and did all right on the 3-cone and shuttle, showing his good movement skills. He's a guy with a very good first step and speed. He can play in space pretty well. And his technique might be a little raw compared to some other guys as a pass blocker, but that's probably because he only spent 2 years in university football, but he compensates for that with his athleticism. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the best offensive lineman from this draft class.
But I remember people talking about that player and how he did. Even a couple of CFL coordinators talked about how he had the highest ceiling just because of his pure athleticism. There's a lot of coaches, even GMs, who like it when a player is like that raw and that athletic, because you kind of got a blank canvas and you can kind of make it what you want it, as opposed to they went to another school where they had like all these techniques and skills ground into them. So, But yeah, that's what I heard too. That if he hadn't been ineligible, he probably would have been even better, obviously, and probably would have ended up down in one of the All-Star games, whether it was the Shrine or the Senior.
He was the second overall pick?
Yeah, he was a second overall pick. I'm not sure how big of a fan I was of that pick, just because I feel like they probably could have gotten one of their top couple offensive linemen at their next pick. I just don't think a single offensive lineman in the class was worth the second overall pick. It's very possible he would have been my first offensive lineman off the board too.
And where did you have him and Noah? Were they both on the CFC40?
Yeah, I had them, I think, on my most recent draft. I think they were at 11 and 12.
Our next prospect is Cyril Hogan. He's 6'5", 300 pounds, out of Quebec. Played at Garneau, then at Laval, and now he's slated to go to the Red Blacks. He's pretty athletic. He played defensive tackle in Cégep. So what do you have to say about him?
Yeah, that was a good pick. I was surprised to see Ottawa go twice with the offensive lineman in their first 2 rounds. But he's a guy I like a lot too. He's definitely a mauler in the run game. He probably has the strongest punch in the class. He's a violent finisher, and he finishes a lot of his blocks on the ground. I think he's a bit of a better run blocker than a pass blocker. I didn't think he had the best one-on-ones at the combine. I wanted to see a little more there. But interestingly, he only dressed for this past year was his first year ever dressing at Laval. He didn't, not just as a starter, but his first year dressing at Laval, because they've had a lot of very good offensive linemen. So it's just interesting that this was his first year dressing. And he's also a really strong guy. He put up 26 reps on the bench press, and you can see that on film too.
We watched this film just recently. What did you see out of that? What year was that? It's 2016?
2016, 17. Probably his senior year in CJ.
Yeah.
He looked like, we watched that and saw the defensive lineman when he played D-line. And he obviously, Quincy's already touched on it, his movement skills were not that great. But you could tell he was powerful because he was bull rushing people and putting people into the backfield. But he wasn't being dynamic. I remember there was a couple of really good defensive tackles there when he was there. He would have just been finishing and they would have been starting, Darian Royale and stuff. But not shocking. He almost sounds like the polar opposite of Zack, in the sense that Zack was only there for 2 years, or only eligible for 2 years. This guy, he probably played 3 or 4 on top of a 4-year CJIP career. And then he only got to play at the end of his career. So he probably put in the work, and he would have been coached by probably the best youth sports O-line coach there is in Carl Brennan. And I'm not surprised that technically he's strong and he has a good punch, but you always notice that. I wouldn't say always, because I don't want to have a negative spin to it. A lot of the Laval players within their scheme at Laval, they look like beasts. When you put them into those one-on-one settings in a East-West or whatever, sometimes they struggle a little bit. And you got to always keep in perspective with Laval players. They're probably reached about as far as you could push them towards their ceiling.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They're probably closer to their ceiling than other guys.
What you see is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
The next player we have talked about a lot at CFC. It was CFC100, Gregor McEllar, 6'5", 311 pounds, out of Timberley, Nova Scotia. He played at Rice University, and looks like the Argonauts picked him up. But again, he has a lot of accolades. He played at Johnny McDonald in Nova Scotia, and then went to some prep schools and et cetera, et cetera. But what do you have to say about Gregor?
Interesting. He said he was 6'5", 311, because that's what he's listed at. But then he came in at the combine and was 6'3". So little bit of a difference there. But yeah,
that's what his thing said. It was 6'5".
2 inches.
He started his career at Rice and then moved to St. FX. He's a little bit more difficult to gauge, because it's hard to tell just how easy it is to throw people around in the AUS. It was weird comparing him, but then you got to see him at the combine, and he showed out in the one-on-ones. Was one of the best couple offensive lineman performances there. He's a strong guy too. He put up 24 reps on the bench press, and he shows it. Has a good anchor. He's another guy who's a violent finisher, although he may not be able to do that as easily in the CFL as the AUS. He played tackle at St. FX, but he's an interior guy all the way at the next level. Although most people probably are in this class, but especially him.
Fun fact about him, according to his bio, he played the bagpipes and competed in the 2013 World Pipe Band Championships in Glasgow, Scotland.
Very interesting.
Just filling in a little bit of his interesting stuff that he does. But what do you remember about McEllar and the bagpipes?
No, he was. I think he was one of those because St. Andrews College always goes to. They always seem to have every couple of years like a Maritimes offensive line contingent. So he followed that route. Probably played in the Canada Cup, did really well, and then ended up at Sac, and then went on Team Canada, and then goes on to those other stops. I remember in high school at Sac, though I didn't know him before St. Andrews College, and he was dominant there. Yeah, he was, and I also totally agree. There's no way he'll play outside at the next level, total guard, but he'll be a really good guard. I think it's cool when players kind of don't have that competitive competition all the time, but then they go to like a Senior Bowl or an East-West and they actually show out extremely well. That's pretty cool for him.
Our next prospect is Zack. He's 6'6", 300 pounds, out of London, Ontario. He went to Western. He's going to the Rough Riders. Again, was picked in the second round, CFC 100. He's got pretty good movement skills, pretty good ability to finish. Quincy, what do you have to say about him?
Yeah, he's a guy who I've actually spent a decent amount of time around being at Western. He's a nice guy. I like him a lot. I do think, though, that he has the best feet in this draft class of the offensive linemen. He's a better pass blocker than run blocker, and he's a guy who I think at the next level could have the ability to chip in at tackle if needed more than the others, just because he has better feet than the rest of the guys. But strength is a serious issue for him. He only put up 9 reps on the bench press, which you can see a little on film. He gets caught kind of leaning sometimes, or can get beat by like the push-pull, being caught off balance, not having that super strong base under him. So that's a big problem. But obviously, you'd rather have guys with natural ability who are weak, because you can make them stronger, than just strong guys who suck. So still a lot of value there. Yeah, I'd like to see him move people a little more rather than just sealing. He does a good job locking on and sustaining that contact and getting his body in the right position, but I'd like to see a little bit more moving. But I think that'll come with the strength too. So I think with him, the biggest thing is really just his strength going forward, and he could have a pretty high ceiling, and one of the couple highest in this class too, if he gets that sold.
Do you remember him, Fry?
I remember him when we ranked him. I mean, and then just watching film, I was like, to build on Quincy's sentiment, I was like, he's so going to get bull rushed. If he gets on the field as a rookie in the CFL, he is so going to get bull rushed over and over and over again his first year. Just because that's the inclination I got too, is like, he's long and his levers are long and he's tall. Obviously, he's 6'6", but I was like, if somebody gets underneath him, especially at the pro level, it could get a little ugly. So he'd be a baby, as we call it, baby tackle.
Baby tackle.
Yeah, it'll take a year for him to get his strength up.
In his reps at guard, I was going to say, I thought both Zaire and Fry actually took a decent amount of reps at guard at the combine, and I actually thought they both looked pretty good. They were doing a lot of quick setting guys and getting hands on fast, and that seemed to work for them, and they kind of stunned a couple guys at the line and got anchored pretty well. So it was nice to see that anchor from a guy with strength concerns.
Well, moving on to Rodeem Brown. He is 6'2", 285. He's out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. He went to Centennial, though, for high school, and then was at the U of A, and is going to be going to Montreal with the Alouettes. Also a CFC 100. He's a real thick player.
Yeah, he is going back to school next year at Alberta. He's an engineering guy, so the Alouettes won't get him for another year.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a guy who he's one of the undersized guys. I know he's listed at 6'2" there, but at the combine he was like 6 feet and half an inch. So he's a shorter guy, came in at like, I think 278 or 280 or something like that. So he's definitely an undersized guy, and that'll limit him to purely being able to play center at the next level. I think that's the only position he'll be capable of playing at the next level. But he's a good mover, as you could well imagine for a guy who's lighter. But he's a guy who probably had the best day of all the offensive linemen at the one-on-ones at the combine. he showed a great anchor. Like he really stood out there. He did a very good job anchoring against the rush with his low center of gravity in that. And he does a really good job resetting his hands if he doesn't get them how he likes on his first punch, which happens a lot when you have short arms. So that's something that he needs to be able to do. And that's something he does do well, is reset his hands. And yeah, good mover, really good, just undersized. So I'd like to see how he develops and how he fares at the next level a year from now.
I would like to know who was doing the measurements for the stuff that's listed on their profiles.
It's a coach.
Like 2 inches is a lot.
That's the standard.
Oh, frig. What do you have to say about Rodim?
I remember him in high school. He was like dominant. I think we saw him playing on team, I can't remember, was it Team Saskatchewan or it was in the Canada Cup anyways. And that's where we discovered him back in the day. And he was like, is he?
Well, he's from Halifax.
That would have been in the Canada Cup
Yeah,
then.
he was.
So he was dominant in the game, and he actually put a lot of people on the ground in his highlight film. And that's what kind of jumped out to us back in the day. But I totally remember him. And I remember how short and stocky he was. So when I saw 6'2", 285, I was like, oh, he grew up. Apparently he didn't. If he's 6 feet tall. And you're right. You're so right. He might be like, well, he'd have to play center. I don't see how he could play any other position. Maybe guard in a pinch or be a swing, like that swing offensive lineman inside. He'll probably make more money as an engineer, though, if he's any good at that.
We're going to move on to Diego Alator. He's 6'3", 305 pounds. I'm just going to say he's from Mexico. I have his hometown, but I'm not even going to attempt to say it. He played at UBC and he's got drafted by the Rough Riders. Quincy, what do you have to say?
Yeah, he's a guy, he's pretty raw, but to me on film looked like he brought some impressive athleticism. I was pretty impressed by his ability to get leverage in just like a step or two and his good lateral quickness. He also has a really strong punch. I'm not actually sure what his wingspan is, but I've heard he has short arms, which isn't good. Yeah, I also noticed for some reason he was late off the ball a lot. Like his first step was like fast, but like the time I don't know, it was just weird. Like it just seemed like he didn't know the snap count or something. Like a few times on his highlights. But yeah, he's a raw guy, but brings some impressive ability, I thought. And he's also a guy who 6'3", 310 is decent size, put up 22 reps on the bench press. So no big red flags there, just a raw and maybe has short arms.
Peter Kazushka is our last prospect that we're going to be talking about. He's 6'7", 318 pounds. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but he is from Yorkton, Saskatchewan, played at Yorkton Regional, went and played at the U of A, and then also is going to be going to the Alouettes. He is a CFC 100, played on Team Sask, Team Canada, but it sounds like he had some injuries in his career, injury problems. So what do you have to say about him, Quincy?
Yeah, he's a guy I remember back before the deferrals coming into the 2020 CFL draft. He was a guy on the consistently atrocious CFL Scouting Bureau rankings. 6'6", 325 at the combine. He's a guy who, I'll give it to him, he did show some impressive improvement from his 2019 film to his 2021 film. From what I saw, I thought his feet got better and his hand placement got better as a blocker. But he's a guy, big body, obviously, at 6'6", 325, but just has pretty limited movement skills. Like that, I'm not sure what his ceiling will be like at the pro level. I had him at 39 on my CFC 40 board. He had a 7-foot broad jump, is not very good. And yeah, just limited movement skills, but a big body that allowed him to be a pretty good U Sports player, but I'm not sure what his potential is at the next level.
Well, he went in the 6th round, so
Body type.
Yeah.
body type, yeah. Do you remember him?
Not him. I remember Kerr Zur. That must have been a really good O-line at Yorkton, though. Like, look at the 2 bookend tackles that maybe played on the same high school team.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Yorkton
2.
always has a pretty good team.
They always have athletes.
Yeah, they do.
They always got players. I don't remember him. I do remember Zur. Like, you can't really go wrong with 6'6". Did you say 325 at the combine?
I'm pretty sure on his Like on his profile, I think he was listed at 6'7", 300, and then came in at 6'6", 325 at the combine. So
There you go.
U
I
of
don't
A had him at 6'7", 318.
oh, did they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but U of A also had Rodine Brown at 6'2".
I know, some shenanigans happening at U of A.
There you go. Way to call out Coach Morris.
Well, that's it for us today. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Recruiting Masters. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter @ChatFootball, Instagram CFC_football, and YouTube. And don't forget to purchase your exclusive CFC Insider Gold membership today for access to the rankings analysis and daily football recruiting news across Canada. Thanks again, Quincy, for all your insight.
No problem. Glad to have joined you guys.